Has the Post Adrian Newey Era already begun? Is a Lance Stroll, Kevin Magnussen matchup the greatest team-up in the history of F1? Welcome to Tinfoil Helmets, your occasional spicy hot take roundup of the latest F1 rumours, all with almost believable conspiracy theories to back them up. Everything here is carefully researched for hours to make sure it is totally founded in logic, reason, and truth. Or not. Who knows? Shall we see what we have got right with our predictions from last week?
Sure, yeah. Let's go right into what did we get right about Miami? This is gonna be a long one.
Maybe I'll need to go
nothing
halfway through.
Massively boring race with nothing of note.
No, it's not bad. Got two races that weren't bad at all.
I think Kevin Magnussen alone made these not boring races.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. If anybody was being paid off to make the races more exciting, it's definitely Kevin Magnussen, because Lord knows he probably isn't making a lot of money at Haas.
Well, you see, the F1 FOM group is paying Haas to stay in the sport, to keep it spicy. Random bits of rain. Did we have any rain?
They made it rain on Lando on the podium.
They did. So, sadly, no.
They were not allowed to make it rain on Donald Trump. We'll get to that.
Yes, but there are videos that say otherwise. Max on pole?
Yep. He is now up to 7 consecutive pole positions, one behind Senna on the all-time pole position list. He will, if he gets pole at Imola, he will tie Senna.
And Senna is number 1?
Senna's number 1 at 8. That would tie Senna at 8.
Okay. Danny Rick shows that China wasn't a fluke. Not really.
I mean, I only watched Saturday, so absolutely.
You just turned off after you'd reached that emotional high.
Yeah. I mean, it was almost a podium. I just turned it off and said, Danny Rick is amazing. He is still great. Yeah, I'm good. And then I turned it right back on to see him hug Lando Norris at the end of the race. So that's, yeah.
Got it.
I only saw the good bits of Danny this weekend.
Where did he come in the sprint race?
4th.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
I thought he qualified 4th. I didn't realize he finished 4th.
Yeah, he held it.
Oh.
He was even up to 3rd there briefly.
Yes, I've got a comment about that later. So pretty good. Okay, I dispute this completely because he was still outraced by Yuki in the real race, the one that really counts.
He was so high after Saturday's successes that he forgot he still had other things to do this weekend.
He needed to feel something.
I gave us half a point on this one.
Okay. I'll accept that. And then did he get strolled again?
I know he didn't get strolled.
No, he didn't get strolled again.
But other people got strolled.
Close, not... How much strolling went on in this race?
I would say Alonso got strolled in the sprint.
Yes, I agree with that. Wholly and completely in every possible way.
We'll get to that.
Yes. So what does this bring our batting average to?
538. We're still above 500.
We're still okay?
Yeah. I mean, on baseball terms, we're fantastic. We're the best since Ted Williams.
Okay, so we're getting signed for... Who's the best team of the day in baseball?
Ooh, that's a loaded question that I don't feel like answering.
Okay, let me ask you a different question. Who's top of the leagues?
Well, who spends the most money would be the LA Dodgers.
Okay, so at the moment, we could be signed for the LA Dodgers.
We would be, without a doubt.
Okay, great. So, not great. Have we got anything right? So basically, it's we got everything wrong. But shall we move on to a very important segment this week? Between race drama.
You know, I almost messaged you on Saturday after the sprint race going, do we need to record Between Race Drama as its own podcast? Because I think we're looking down the barrel of a 90-minute so far.
Yeah, I did consider this. I was wondering whether we should split it to make sure that we covered everything with the sprint race, get it over and done with, move on, so that we could do it for the race. But based on our expectations and our careful analysis, our AI models, our statistical analysis, using history, as I learned the way fortune-telling asparagus are a real thing, that we were going to have a boring race, but sadly they were all wrong. So here we are.
I think the most impressive thing is we've really kind of been struggling for some between race drama for the first 5 rounds of the championship, and it just all came out this week. Everything happened this week.
Was this a conspiracy by FOM to make sure that we had some news because they realised that the sport was getting a bit sleepy and had to spice it up, and they've now spent it all in 1-2 week period?
Or the real question is what are they trying to hide? What did we miss in all this? With letting all these other news stories come out, what have we missed in this in all the other news stories?
I love it. That's absolutely perfect. So First one on the list, which is both significant but also not significant, but it does give us the opportunity for jokes. Ferrari signed HP as a title sponsor, and when we say title sponsor, the rumor is this is a bigger deal than the Oracle deal with Red Bull, which was 380 million or 300 million over 3 years, I think it was.
I didn't know where HP had this sort of money.
From all your subscriptions to the Ink.
Apparently, because I grew up in Texas, and HP was a major employer in the Austin area, and I had friends in college who had deal or offers on the table with HP, and they were laid off before they even got a chance to start, because it turns out when you make 300 different varieties of printers, nobody knows which printer to buy, and they don't buy your printers.
Well, also the internet happened.
The internet did happen, and they totally forgot about that, and then they tried to sell iPods at some point in time. I don't know how HP has Ferrari sponsorship money.
Well, maybe they don't, and it's all going to go the way of crypto. But as part of this title sponsorship, we need to be clear about talking the very important spicy moment. There was a lot of noise made by Ferrari about a very special livery for Miami. It was going to be blue. We had previews of the team get up for like the suits, which were blue, harkening back to the classic days, matching in with whatever the name of the guy is that's in cars, that's the Ferrari guy that's in blue. Like, it was a thing, it was going to happen, and they were going to wait to launch the livery, and then they launched the livery, and it was exactly the same as it did every time with the strange blue stripe down the side of it. It was terrible. Awful.
I do have to say, I liked the racing suits. I thought that was a very good blue, very good look.
Perfect.
The other thing is, how many HP logos did they manage to squeeze on that car?
They not only managed to squeeze a lot on that car, they squeezed them onto the F1 Academy Ferrari car too.
HP sponsored somebody in like the 2000s, right? They sponsored, I think, Williams?
I think you're correct. No, wait, that was Compaq, which became HP. Well, not became, they merged.
Yes.
There was a situation.
So mergers and acquisitions.
Exactly.
But it's not like, we're not one of those podcasts. We're not going to talk about that. Indeed. Either way, I very much felt like it was, you look at the classic pictures of the car that I know had HP or Compaq logos on way back when. I have to say, it's like they just tried to, well, we know we like the HP logo here. We're just going to throw it on there with like no overall thought to the rest of the livery.
Is this really out of character for either Ferrari or HP? Really, to be brutally honest.
I'm going to go Ferrari, yes, HP, no.
Okay.
I think Ferrari has a little bit too much sometimes Italian romanticism for the sport.
Yes.
Which can be a great thing.
Yes.
But it can also be a detrimental thing when Javi is your race engineer.
We are checking.
Exactly. Nobody ever knows anything as a Ferrari engineer. They always have to look it up.
Exactly.
So I kind of expect a little bit more from Ferrari in terms of Italian design and quality. And, no, we're not going to just slap your American logo all over our car because you gave us $400 million, so now we can sign Adrian Newey? Interesting.
So that is the reason, right? The reason they had to sully themselves with this terrible deal and the terrible-looking car was because they signed Lewis, he's expensive, and they've had to go sign, or supposedly signing, Adrian Newey. And so that leads to a big, significant question about what's going on here. But, aren't they selling any cars? Are they not selling any cars? What's the point of Ferrari if you're not selling any cars?
Well, this is the problem when you're... Have you ever heard Jay Leno's rant about buying a Ferrari?
No.
Oh, it's worth going to look up. He's like, I hate wanting to buy a Ferrari because, like, you have to, like, buy a Ferrari to prove you're interested in buying a Ferrari. You can't just go buy, like, the best Ferrari. You have to buy a lower-level Ferrari to prove you are interested in buying a Ferrari. And then if you buy a couple of those, then they'll offer you the fancy Ferrari. And Jay Leno's like, I just want the fancy Ferrari. Like,
what are you supposed to do with the other three cars? Because you probably can't sell them. You have to keep them for at least, however long.
Well, that's not really a Jay Leno problem, given he has, like, 150 cars.
True. But if you've only got enough space for 148, having to have an extra 3 cars is a problem.
Yeah. In a future podcast, we'll go down Jay Leno's car list and see which ones we think he should sell for his 5 Ferraris in order to get the other Ferrari. And apparently they're also very picky about who you sell your Ferrari to if you decide you no longer want your Ferrari.
Yes. It reminds me, but is not as bad as, the Lexus IFA from the mid-2000s, I think it was, maybe late 2010s, which was a V10 special car. You didn't own the car. It was $500,000, but you didn't own it. You were buying the right to hold on to it indefinitely, and if you sold it, you had to sell it back to Toyota first.
Ferrari did that, didn't they? They had a track-only car that you could,
yes,
like the FFX or something. Yeah, something like that, yeah.
It was not road legal, and they kept it, and you just called them up and said, I would like to drive it at X place, and it would magically show up with a full pit crew.
Right. And I think there were only so many X places you could operate it at because it was rather loud.
Yes, it needed a real racetrack.
But even then, not all real racetracks allow you to operate, your really loud cars on random weekends.
Laguna Seca, for example.
Exactly. NIMBYs.
Shall we move on to the next big item?
I think we segued into it, which is Adrian Newey seems to be leaving Red Bull.
Yes. I think this is very important because it is clear he is unable to finish designing and building any hypercar. Because he broke up with Aston Martin before they finished the Valkyrie one, and now he's breaking up with Red Bull again.
I thought part of the deal was he was going to finish the hypercar.
Well, he's going to finish it, but he's not going to finish it, right? Because remember, the first one's going to be not what he needs it to be. It's going to be the second or third revision, and he's just not going to be there. He's going to have pieced out. He has no commitment to finishing his hypercars. The lesson here is, people, if Adrian Newey offers to either design or sell you a hypercar, the answer is no, because you will not get the aftermarket support that you need.
Yeah, and I think really the biggest speculation in all of this is, where is Adrian going to go?
Indeed.
I'm not necessarily convinced he's going anywhere right off the bat.
That's what he's saying. He's saying he's going to take time. He's going to take his motorhome with his wife and his dog, and they're going to drive through Europe, probably to Italy, maybe.
Well, not until the first quarter of 2025.
There you go.
Yeah. That's. I know we've been speculating off the air because we do talk outside of the podcast. Sorry to pull the curtain back from our listeners, but we do talk behind the scenes, and this
podcast takes planning.
Yeah, and we can go down the list of teams, and it's like he flat out said he will not work for Aston Martin, which is hilarious.
He didn't say that publicly though.
I saw something along those lines where he was like, I will not work for, he essentially has ruled out Aston Martin, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, I heard he'd ruled it out privately because they offered him a lot of money and he said no.
Yeah, which is hilarious.
Yes.
Mercedes is interesting, but I think what Toto said is we need a magician to fix the car, not like just Adrian.
Yes, I thought that was, as I said, I think it was as good as Adrian is. He's not a magician.
Right. You heard something about Williams, right?
Yes. So James Vowles, while at the team principal press conferences yesterday, was asked about it, and he said that he had been friends with Adrian throughout the years, and they just caught up and catched up, and he said it would be what was the word he used? It was basically, it would be silly of me as a team principal to not talk to Adrian Newey, even if it seems unlikely, to offer him the opportunity to come and work with Williams and do whatever he needs to do. Which I thought was pretty interesting because I'm pretty sure they don't have the money. But then again, I'm not sure Adrian's looking for money.
There is the one thing that Williams could probably offer Adrian Newey, which is something that he has not had at any of his previous stops, including Williams, that he wanted at Williams, which is an ownership share.
Oh, interesting. Doleton Capital might be willing to do that for him.
Yeah, because it's one thing to back up the money truck, but it's another thing to be like, do you want to be an equity partner in this losing endeavor? Yeah,
he's not going to get that from Ferrari. He's definitely... Well, he could have got... I suppose actually Aston Martin might have been willing to offer him that, because he's selling off bits of the Aston Martin anyway.
Yeah, but there's other things we could speculate there on why he might not want to work for Aston Martin.
Indeed.
But I think Williams is by far the most interesting. Ferrari seems to be the most likely that this is going to happen, because he says his two regrets was that he never got to work with Lewis and he never got to work with Ferrari. And now, starting in Q1 2025, he could do both those things.
It's interesting that he's being so slow to make the decision, which I think suggests that some of the narrative that he's just which he said himself, he's tired. I've spent a lot of time doing this. At the end of 2021, I was feeling a bit, overwhelmed with it all. I think there's a certain amount of truth to that, more than I think when a person chooses to retire, there's always oh, blah, 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 I want to spend more time with my family, blah, blah, blah. It's because they want to quit or they've got a better offer somewhere else. So there's at least some truth in that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It'll be interesting to see if he does even end up somewhere, because I could also see him just are there Formula One rules on consulting? Could he just consult with 3 different teams?
I had that exact same thought, and I thought it'd be absolutely brilliant for him to go around. It's I'm not going to design your car. I'm not going to help you fix your car, and I'm not going to work and go to races. But what I will do is I will look at your design and then basically say, that sucks, or you're on the right track, and be done with it and charge you £1 million. Because I feel like that's worth it.
So whenever the races are on, like at normal times, I always love watching like the pre-show, mostly especially Miami, to see what cringe Martin Brundle's going to bring us on the grid walk. Surprisingly low levels of cringe today. But they did show Adrian Newey, and he was going up and down the grid looking at like all the cars.
Yeah, you see? Getting ready for his consultancy business, working on it now.
Yeah, and I think it would be interesting if not necessarily like he would be designing all these teams' cars, but like, hey, have you considered moving the barge boards here? Have you considered doing this to your front wing? Like, just because I think the man sees in CFD. So, like, could he just tell people how to fix their current cars without, like, designing the whole grid?
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens, and I think it's going to be very interesting as silly season kicks off. Because not only do you now have the driver, where can I get a seat at a possibly okay place? Each driver now has to ask the question, is the team going to get Adrian Newey? Because apparently there are some of the drivers with big names who've been talking with Williams, and now Williams can be like, well, maybe we're going to get an Adrian Newey car. Maybe you do want to deal with us being at the back of the grid for another year.
I mean, if he's BFS with James Vowles, maybe they get the band back together or something.
The band back together? Did he work with James before?
No, but, you know, the metaphorical band.
The one at Williams where he can right the wrongs of Frank.
Yes. It would be interesting. I think in my top three, I'd say I think most likely he goes to Ferrari.
Yes.
I think the second most likely thing is he retires, and I think third is Williams.
I would agree with that. I think that's very believable.
Because there's also something to his legacy in the sense of, could he go to Williams with the budget cap and build them a rocket ship?
Yes. And I think if you want to build your legacy, the way to do that is to turn up, nail it to the wall in the first full season that you're there, and then nope out, right? Like, turn up for 2026, be like, I'm going to get you into a great place, and then at the end of the season, after I stand up on the podium to receive the World Constructors' Championship Award for your first time in 20 years, I'm just going to be like on the microphone interviewing him like, peace, and then leave. Because that would be like, it's like all those TV shows where they go on for one season too long. The key is to stop while you're at the top and be unbeatable.
Yeah, see, maybe this is why he didn't want to go to Aston Martin, because they know he'd be some sort of, like, experiment in how long we can keep Adrian Newey living.
I can totally see that, too. Peter Thiel's going to show up along with Larry Ellison and be like, so, here's how we take the blood of young children and turn it into something amazing.
Exactly.
Terrible.
And then there's the one thing we haven't talked about is what seems to have motivated Adrian to leave the team.
He was tired of dealing with Christian's crap.
Yeah, it was Christian's crap specifically that the personal assistant in question was his.
It was a shared personal assistant, to be clear.
Yeah, still, that's that's not good.
It's not good. If Red Bull falls from grace, it will fall entirely and completely upon Christian Horner's genitals.
Well, what was the thing in The Dark Knight? You either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
He's doing that.
Exactly.
But I do, yeah. I thought Max had some really good answers this weekend when posed about, how's it going to go without Newey and things like that. And he's like, well, he's got to do what's right for him. It's fine. Like, we have a good team in place. And apparently Newey's very good at mentorship. Mm-hmm. And he's been at Red Bull, I think, for the longest time of any of his teams.
Yep.
So, and I mean, if we're already saying like after 2021 he was kind of seeming a bit tired, I think other teams are not going to implode, or Red Bull is not going to implode as hard as maybe Williams did when he left Williams,
or Mercedes did when they forgot how to make cars.
Yeah.
So. It's interesting because there's this question, right, that I don't think we all know, and I don't think anybody really knows, right, I think it is a challenge, and it is amazing when you have somebody who is truly fantastic, who imbibes that within the organization through mentorship, right? There's so much of that can be taught about your philosophy and your culture and the way to think about problems and blah, 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 blah. But the question is the seed, and has the seed been set by him, right? And the question is the team able to keep it together without him, right? I think it's interesting to look at, not to invoke such deity as Steve Jobs. How has Apple continued with its success after he has left? And I think passed away. But he left before he passed away, so But there's a really interesting question in that context about, like, Apple supposedly spent a lot of this time creating the Apple University inside to try and teach the culture and the way so that they can stay up on top. But they're kind of faltering now. And the question is what's the causality behind that? Was it inevitable? Were they going to end up there? And that's the question about Red Bull. Was he propping the team up? Was it the to make a tent, you got to have 4 poles and a roof. Was he one of the poles?
Well, I guess my spicy take would be that in 2024, somebody who can't use a CAD program is holding the team back.
I can hard subscribe to that, but that's the question. Was he the seed? Is it his brains that did it? Or was it his management style? Because the management style can linger and live on afterwards. Although I'd argue with Christian Horner around, I'm not sure the management style can last that long.
That we'll see.
Yep.
That's all I can say on that. Like I could take it both ways, but we'll see.
2026.
It's going to be a big one.
Yeah, so shall we move on to the next race drama related item?
Sure, let's go for it.
Nico Hülkenberg, in actually predicted but also still what's surprising a move, has signed on for a multi-year deal with Audi/Sauber. And I think this raises the question of, is Carlos dilly-dallying too long, and is somebody else going to snap that seat up? Because one of them is now gone. Nico Hülkenberg has it. I think almost justifiably, because he has been driving pretty well in that Haas since he came back.
I mean, if you want a proven non-race winner, Nico Hülkenberg is your guy.
Yes, if they can win with him, it'd be amazing. Just like McLaren took the team from nothing to a win today. Not to fast forward for that. But this does raise a bigger question about the team at Sauber. What is happening with Guan Yu Zhou, and what is happening with Valtteri Bottas?
You mean Valtteri Bottas, the guy who qualified for Gravel World Championships on his bicycle?
Yes, I think it's very interesting. Supposedly he has been talking to lots of teams, so I'm very curious whether he's actually going to stay in F1. I feel of all the current people, other than Logan Sargent, who is likely to get kicked out at the end of this season, I think it could be Mr. Bottas.
I wouldn't say Valtteri gets kicked out. I'd say Valtteri finds passions outside of Formula One, because I think for Valtteri it's going to be like, could I get to one of the top flight teams again? No, I'm going to go ride my gravel bike with Tiffany and have a good time.
The one wild card there is, I think there is still a slim chance, depending on all the Mercedes seat problems, whether he actually comes back for one last ride at Mercedes and proves that he's better than George Russell.
That would be interesting. I don't see it happening, but he would essentially be a seat warmer for Kimi at that point in time.
Correct. And we have lots of news about Kimi. Actually, that is next. Do we want to move on to Kimi?
I mean, we're segueing well. It'll be interesting to see if Guan Yu Zhou keeps his seat, but I don't see it happening.
He did outperform Bottas today.
Sure.
For the first time, I think, this season.
And that team still has no points.
Indeed. So speaking of Kimi, just to clarify for all our listeners, we are not talking about Kimi Räikkönen. Kimi Räikkönen is definitely retired, and there is zero chance of him coming back. But there is a new gentleman called Kimi Antonelli, who we've occasionally mentioned before.
Kimi retired in 2007 after his world championship win.
Well, exactly.
To be honest.
100% true. But Kimi apparently was driving the W13, the cursed, terrible zero-pod design, at Imola this week. He did 2...
You mean the most successful ground effect car Mercedes has built?
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
And so he was at Imola, and apparently he beat both Lewis and George Russell's times from Imola 2022 by a whole second a lap. Like, super, like, full-blown extra super magic. And obviously this was in exactly the same conditions, because clearly... wait, no, hang on a minute, that's wrong, because then it rained at Imola, and was cold and was stinky and generally terrible, and apparently it was a very reasonable, breezy, dry day. So who knows what's going on? But supposedly this performance was so fantastic and absolutely mind-blowing that Williams is going to fire Logan Sargent before Imola, so that they can put Kimi in the Williams. And we know that this has at least some truth, because supposedly the FIA have had a special exception request filed, because Kimi is under 18, and so he does not qualify to drive an F1 with that special exception. And his birthday is August the 25th, and so if they filed it, it means they're going to have him in before August 25th. And let's be clear, it's not going to be Monaco, because you don't drop someone in at the deep end at Monaco, because it's just boring and you're not going to do anything. And so
you're saying that a rookie driver couldn't do as well as Logan Sargent at Monaco?
Correct.
Okay.
It's Monaco.
I mean, I think P20 is still P20, no matter how you slice it.
True. But then again, this is where it gets like it's the roller coaster. So the follow-up to that is that James Vowles in the press conference after this had happened, and he was asked about it, said, I haven't talked to Kimi in a year, I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, technically, he said Abu Dhabi 2023, which was like 5 months ago.
True. Which I find is super fascinating because apparently the name of the team that's applying for this exception is Williams. So I don't know what's going on there. But then there was another rumour, which given that he hasn't talked to him and they're not talking about anything because we're happy with Logan and Logan's got the metrics that he's struggling to hit, but he needs to hit them, is that apparently Williams have said that they're not interested unless they can keep Kimi for 2 years, which is very confusing, which means he'll be into the 2026 season, which when Adrian Newey goes to Williams means that Kimi Antonelli will get his first championship not in a Mercedes car. It's going to be great. And then the last bit of spicy, fascinating news that came up is apparently they're doing another day in the W13, this time at Silverstone, and Mick Schumacher's getting in the other car, and they're going to go and compare times between Mick and Kimi. I don't know why you would compare to Mick Schumacher, to be brutally honest, but nonetheless, I thought that was interesting, but apparently that's happening next week.
Well, good. We'll have more spicy rumors between race drama next time around.
When we get to the spicy takes and rumors at the very end, I have a other half of this rumor that fits perfectly well with this.
You know, it actually, that kind of makes a little bit more sense to put Valtteri in the second Mercedes seat, if possible.
Exactly.
Because then if you say, well, we want Kimi for 2 years, you say, okay, what about Kimi or Valtteri? Like, you know, we'll do the swapsy thing there. And then Valtteri gets to go out like he went in with a Williams contract. And everybody's nice and happy and has good vibes all around, except for maybe... Oh, and then as a result, with Newey going to Williams in 2026, and then Mercedes pulling Kimi up, then you get a Alex Albon, Valtteri Bottas style Braun GP.
Perfect. I love it. It's going to be amazing and super fantastic. Speaking of Mr.
Just how we drew it up.
Exactly. And speaking of Valtteri Bottas, he got a new race engineer, and they didn't tell him until he turned up at the weekend.
Always great.
It's
Way
great.
to keep your drivers in the loop. A+.
Perfect. Spot on. And it helped him get was it a three-place grid penalty drop? He did get a three-place grid penalty drop because he drove into Oscar Piastri because nobody told him that the car was coming.
That's right.
So that sucked. Do you want to cover the next item?
The 12 members of Congress that want an answer from Liberty about why Andretti was denied?
Because of antitrust concerns.
Fantastic. I think it's great.
Yeah, the Sherman Antitrust Act delivers again.
Fun fact, apparently, that the reason Congress is allowed to do this is because Formula One has put more F1 races in the U.S. If it was only in Austin and it was only the one race, it means that it's only Texas, so then it doesn't cross interstate lines. But now that it's Florida, Texas, and Nevada, that crosses interstate lines and brings it into more of their purview.
It is now a federal issue. It is no longer a states' rights issue.
Right.
Fascinating. You see, this is F1 and it's not playing on the advanced team here. FOM need to sort their lives out.
I think it's very interesting. I think it's at least maybe we'll get some answers some way or the other of why.
I thought it was a really interesting approach. I was surprised that they decided to pull out the old antitrust trigger here.
Well, and I think it's always good if you are a sporting governing body and you want to thumb your nose at, say, a city or a team that wants to join your organization, you always want to be very careful about how you're vetting things, because the last thing you want is the feds to get involved and saying, what are you doing here?
Yeah. Good work, Liberty Media. You know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. Let's remember, the NFL is an approved monopoly.
Is it? Does it have federal approval?
It does.
Is it written into one of the many constitutions?
No, it's a law.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Does that also apply to baseball?
I haven't looked at the law in a while. It might be. I know the big four sport leagues are essentially protected.
Okay, interesting. So what you're saying is that the F1 really should have sorted this out before they thought about doing this.
Yeah. And then, speaking of politics, and I don't want to get too political on our Formula One podcast, but it looks like some Donald Trump fan was interested in trying to host a suite at the Miami GP as a Donald Trump fundraiser. And, well, we knew he was going to show up. Like, that was already a given. But it was, and he did show up. But it was also a case of Liberty was like, no, you can't use our event as your fundraiser, which I get.
Yeah. I feel that the aspects of keeping politics out of sports, which is a hot button topic for many people,
and especially by someone by the name of Zach Brown, who thinks the FIA should stay out of and F1 should stay out of politics.
Indeed, and then he sullies the The name of that team. But the thing that's interesting about this is like, no, we're not going to explicitly allow politics in it. And I think that is possibly the right line to be drawn, because there's a subtle difference between a person standing on a podium wearing a t-shirt asking for justice, who was somebody who was murdered by the various police forces, being told that they can't do that again, and then people explicitly bringing it in a very formal manner. And I think there is a very fine line there. Lewis was on the right side, and I feel that this, to a certain extent, keeping them kicked out, was also on the right side. So.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is I'm disappointed Donald Trump was not on the grid walk with Martin Brundle, because as we all know, Martin Brundle has no chill, and I just wanted him to walk up to Donald Trump and be like, "So, Donald, how are the trials going?"
That would have been perfect.
Right?
Did Mr. Putin show up for the track walk in Sochi?
Well, we know somebody who looks like Vladimir Putin showed up to the Sochi races. We don't know if it was actually Vladimir Putin.
Fair point. Have we covered the drama between the races?
In 30 short minutes.
Perfect. Shall we quickly breeze through? Does Blah still have a job?
Well, Lance and Logan are still employed as of recording, so yes.
Yeah. I put Max in here because he can't overtake anymore. Not to spoil the race, which I'm not doing here, but he definitely struggled to overtake, and he just looks a bit washed up. I think he might have crested, and he has peaked. It's just downhill from here.
So I watched the pre-show, and Danica had an interview with Max during the pre-show, and she's like, "So what are your goals in Formula One?" And he's like, "Oh, I've reached them all. I'm good." Like he's not the guy who wants to win 8 or 10 drivers' titles. He's good with what he has. He prefers driving the car when he can just, blitz away from everybody by 20 seconds because he loves like a really well set up car on rails. Like, yeah, he's like, yeah, close racing's fun, but like I prefer it when I'm 20 seconds ahead and can just drive the car on rails.
Did he really say that?
He really said that.
Oh, I think I think he might be out before the end of the year.
He said he likes he doesn't mind the close racing, but he likes when they feel they can get everything out of the car. And, that even checks with his post-race interview when he was like, yeah, I don't think we got everything out of the car today, and we'll go back to the drawing board and get it. But it's definitely a case of, I think he also said there are other things he wants to race. So I think you get to a point of, is it the end of 25? Is it after 26? Does he run out his full contract? But, Max isn't the guy who's going to be around until he's Fernando Alonso's age, still trying to race Formula One cars.
The thing we have to remember is, based on the previous person choosing to quit their job because they wanted to know about it, I'm pretty sure Max is no longer subject to his contract. His exit clauses can be triggered trivially now.
Ooh.
So I think Marco was the one that has been confirmed, but I think it was also a Christian and a Newey thing, so that he had to get out of jail free clause. And so I do think that if he might, especially if he wins well this year throughout the rest of the season, which doesn't seem unlikely, I could see him choosing to go out before 2025. Because
I think he'll stay in as long as he is winning and feels good about the winning. I think if 2026 happens and the car's a solid midfield car, he's not sticking around.
Yeah, he doesn't like the 2026 car, even if it's a successful car. He hates the fact that it's got active aero and blah 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 blah.
And I could see him going and racing what we joked about, like Le Mans or the Indy 500, trying to do the Triple Crown, but all the sim racing races he wants in real life sort of thing. Because we know people would give him a drive, and maybe he does that for a couple of years and comes back to Formula One for one last hurrah.
I would love him in WEC. Him and Lance on opposite teams in WEC would be great.
Yeah, I would love to see Max in WEC.
Yes. Okay. Anybody else would like to talk about their possible career prospects?
I will just say one last note on Max and WEC. I think it would be absolutely interesting if Max does WEC with like iRacing greats who he like brings up and mentors in the car. So like it's like Max is like your pro driver, and then like 2 other guys who are really good, or girls who are really good at sim racing. Yep. And that's the team, and Max is mentoring these people from the virtual world to the real world, and then wins the Le Mans in one of these cars.
I'd love that. I think that would show true leadership, and I think that's what's often missing with a lot of people at the top of F1.
And a great story, and don't forget, we love sports because of great stories.
Exactly. That's why we're here.
There's a reason Welcome to Wrexham is an Emmy-winning show.
No spoilers. I haven't started the 3rd season yet. So.
Me either. I mean, I watched the table. I do know what happens to them this season.
I didn't.
Oh, you don't? Oh, okay. Well, they play a lot of soccer and or football, depending on what nomenclature you want to use.
Man, do they play NFL football as well? Just for
No,
a crossover?
they don't.
I'm surprised they haven't done that
think
as a promotional thing. Anyway, let's get on to remembering this was a sprint weekend. The sprint qualifying, I'm sorry, it's called a shootout.
The biggest thing I have there is Mercedes needs to back the money truck up to Adrian Newey's house after that sprint qualifying.
Yeah, that was terrible. It was really interesting because there was a comment after the fact, and I think it applied also after quali, that getting the tyres into the right temperature window to get them just so made a night and day difference to that car, and I think it also applied to some other cars, but it was interesting how on the knife edge with respect to the tyres was, that I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I feel like the Red Bulls almost suffered from how they were at Singapore last year of like, because the track is low grip, low deg, they can't fire up the tires as well as they can around other tracks. So I think that's what led them to have some issue or not show the amazing pace they have, because I think that car is so good on its tires, it needs some deg.
Yes. And it needs to get the temperature into the carcass, and I think that's what happens is it stays on the surface and doesn't go into it because it's sliding around like an ice rink. I think the other fun fact from sprint quali was that Lando's SQ2 time was faster than Max's SQ3 pole time.
But that's not how they measure it.
Nope, and he did it on the medium tyres too, which is even more hilarious. So,
and Daniel Ricciardo in P4
somehow managed to pull that off. I still don't know what he was doing. Maybe this comes back to the tyre thing that not everybody else managed to get their tyres in the right temperature, and he just somehow managed it just on that one lap because the sunbeam shining down from upon high to make sure that he didn't get fired helped him get his tyres right. I don't know. It's interesting.
Are you suggesting that there is a deity out there protecting Daniel Ricciardo?
Attempting to. They're not doing a good job of it because he's definitely in danger.
No. Well, it's not the best deity, but it's a deity.
Enchanté.
The only thing I will say in Daniel Ricciardo's defense is it's like, if it was one lap that gets him into Q2, fine. But the fact that he did it enough to get to Q3 and then put it on fourth place in Q3, like that's something. That's not a one-off. He had to do that several times.
But wasn't it squeaky bum time for the SQ1 and SQ2? I think it was squeaky bum time. So
you make it through, you make it through.
True. You do it, you do it. You don't, you don't.
And his teammate, I believe, was out in SQ1.
Yep.
So
Yuki had spent too much time in the Hard Rock Cafe paying $280 for a burger.
Yeah, and I will say that, a lot of times you see if one teammate goes out in Q1, very rarely do you see the other teammate not go out in Q2.
Correct.
Pending rain and all that.
Should we move on to the race recap?
Sprint race recap. Because it's one of those weekends. Oh, jeez, this is a long one. So Lance did it, right?
Yeah, Lance. It was 100% Lance's fault. And for those that haven't watched the race, Lance screwed up, drove into Alonso. More accurately, blocked Alonso from getting out of the way and making a turn so that Lewis shot down his inside and then banged into him, banging into Lance, and Lance banged into Norris, taking Norris out of the race.
What did you think of the stewards' decision to not investigate that incident at all?
I think it was probably fine because it's a first lap racing incident.
Yeah, I don't know.
If it was any other driver, okay, not any other driver, if it had been KMag, we'll come to that in a minute, if it had been Lance, which it was, if it had been Checo, and I think maybe if it had been Logan, as people who are constantly involved, and one of the Alpine twins, I think they should have been investigated because I think you just need to double down on it. But everybody else got away scot-free. But because it was Lance, I feel like he needs a lesson to be taught to himself.
I don't like the idea of applying rules to a person.
No.
I understand like lap one, turn one incidents always get judged a little differently, but it seems very strange to me that for Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz, Alonso got a 10-second penalty in China in the sprint for something a lot less egregious than what seemed to have gone down at turn one, lap one. Because there are times where they investigate it, for sure, if it's a turn one incident, and it just has to be overly egregious. And I feel like anytime you kick somebody out of the race, that is when the overly egregious line gets cost. You have ruined somebody's race and somebody needs to pay for it.
Yes, I think that is the defining characteristic that so often is ignored, which they say they intentionally do, but I think I think they need to revisit that perspective. I think Lewis was spicy into this. I do think he was not doing his best. He was not wholly or completely at fault.
He kind of gave George the runaround this weekend in the races.
He did.
Yeah.
And he was spicy all weekend. He was taking no prisoners.
I mean, that dive into turn one was spicy.
Yeah, it's very spicy. Danny, I think, drove the race like it was Monaco. And I have this very...
Wait, this wasn't Monaco? It starts with an M.
It does start with an M, and it is in a very watery city. And it's got the harbour thing with the expensive boats in the not real... Wait, no, this isn't right. It's Monaco Light, right? It's like a light beer.
I mean, there's no way you can overtake through some of those chicanes, just like
exactly
Monaco.
But I have a very spicy take with respect to Daniel Ricciardo and his Monaco win. The only reason he won was because he managed to somehow get out front based on luck and the deity helping him get somewhere. But he didn't deserve to win that race.
He didn't. He got fourth.
No, in Monaco he won in 2018.
Okay. I thought we were talking about Miami.
No, I'm trying to say he drove like it was Monaco. The only reason he was in P4 was because the track is not great for overtaking, and he was good at operating as a roadblock, more sportsmanlike than a certain other driver who we will talk about in a moment. But I do think that Gianni was extremely lucky.
Yeah, but I think there's also he kept a works Ferrari behind him in a Toro Rosso. That's not easy, even on
Monaco.
Even not Miami.
Yeah. He lives and trades on that win at Monaco, and I think he overtrades on it. People overvalue that win.
I don't know. I thought it was very impressive when he did it. Well, to me, if we're gonna make this podcast even longer by rehashing races from 6 years ago, that race to me was like it was two things of how great Danny is as a driver and how Monaco is as a track.
Monaco is such a terrible, terrible track. We should stop racing there. It is not fun and it's not interesting.
You need a DRS zone through the tunnel going into the chicane. Why don't we do that?
We need that, and we need to make the track just a hint wider, even for narrower cars.
Everybody gets a go-kart. We're going to do it on go-karts.
Yes. In my continued ongoing rewatch, I've now watched, I think, I'm up to 1988, and every time we go to Monaco is the most boring race. It's not... People are like, Monaco, it's such a historic race. Oh, it's fantastic. It's only because you've got big cars that we can't do overtaking. Blah, blah, blah. Modern cars, blah, blah, blah. It's a bunch of crap. It has absolutely been boring and terrible for the last 40 years. It is... Nobody should be at Monaco.
I'm not going to spoil it for you, but wait till you get to like 1996. I think it was 96.
One swallow does not make a summer.
Oh, the bird. Okay. Anyway.
You thought I was going to finish that sentence differently.
Maybe. Okay. Anyway, Lewis drove great.
Yeah, I thought he was great. Did you see the pre-race interview this morning that he did on the driver show and tell?
No, I didn't.
So he was interviewed. I just saw a quote from this where he was asked about how he felt about the race. And he said he had chatted to KMag and he'd said to KMag, "Oh, I had a great race," to which KMag replied with, "I didn't." And Lewis genuinely looked chuffed, and it sounded like he had a great time going battle and forth and trying to spice his way around the moving roadblock with the terrible unsportsmanlike driving that is Kevin Magnussen. I thought that was quite interesting. I do think it was a little unfair that he got robbed from whatever position he was in, like 6th, by 20-second penalty for driving too fast. But he was a full 10 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, which is pretty egregious.
I did you see the onboard of it?
I did, but I couldn't make sense because people were like, "Why was he doing this?" And I couldn't quite make sense of what was going on.
That's a good question of why he was doing it, but his defense was that, like, well, I obeyed the average time, like, that it takes to go down the pit lane. Like, that was his defense. And it's like, yeah, but this isn't like a VSC situation where you're out on a track. Like, there are people there, like, changing tires and stuff. Like, so, no, Lewis, that's...
No. It's the pit
lane. Good try, but no.
It always has a speed limit of 80 kilometers an hour. It doesn't matter what it is. There's no excuse. There is always, 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 in an official race weekend, there's always a speed limit down that pit lane.
And there's even a button on your steering wheel that says, "Hey, don't get fined."
And we know how good Lewis is at pressing the button on the steering wheel at the right time. Cough, cough, Azerbaijan 2021, lost in the championship.
Dominic, we don't have time to relitigate another race from the past.
Indeed. Big question. I think this also extends to the real race. Maybe we'll skip it when we get to the real race to save us some time. But what happened to Russell? He was doing nothing all weekend. He barely out-qualified Lewis. Like, it wasn't just like he was out-qualified him by like 0.02 of a second. It was ridiculous. It was there. Russell, you are washed up. You're going to be replaced soon by Kimi Antonelli or Carlos Sainz. And Max Verstappen, one of the three.
Well, I think as we all know, Lewis is a fan of the glitz, glamour, and the limelight of Miami, and George is not.
Really? George doesn't like the limelight? He needs the spotlight on him at all times, preferably without his shirt on, if at all possible.
No, he needs the limelight in Formula One. He doesn't want it in the real world. Lewis loves it in the real world.
Yeah, but why does George keep posting pictures of himself without his top on the internet in various places? Like he does it all the time.
George.
He loves it. He's loving it.
Yeah.
It's George. We don't like George. We should talk about KMag. Should we talk about KMag here, or should we wait to talk about KMag in the race?
I think we should just always talk about KMag. Kevin Magnussen.
We need to make that happen. People get on the internet and start tweeting that. Kevin Magnussen. Remember it.
Man, he was just...
It was the thing that I thought was the worst crime that he committed in the sprint race was he basically just chose to drive straight over a corner and mean that Lewis, who was turning in, couldn't get past. Now, I understand that sometimes this has happened. This isn't when he over the chicane. The chicane was different. It was just like, if you're going to like literally know you are going to intentionally go off to prevent someone from turning in, that's where you're not racing anymore. You've made a different choice. You're not cheating. You're not like, getting a bit of an advantage by cutting a corner. You are like, no, I'm just going to YOLO this. And I thought that was the worst part. It was terrible. Those penalties are going to take him out if he's not careful. And I think this race might be a suspension. And if I am Toto, I will be making a phone call, which we'll talk about later at the end.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I honestly, I think at a certain point, like, if you rack up that many 10-second penalties, we need to be talking about a disqualification from the race.
Yes. I did have a question as we were watching the race. Again, I'm trying not to get into the race. But what happens if you reach enough penalty points during the race that you would be suspended from the next race? Do you actually suspend them in the middle of the race they're currently in? I don't know. I have questions for the FIA.
No, I think you're not suspended until the next race.
Because they don't apply until the end of the race.
Yeah. Now, the real question would be, what happens if you hit that limit at like the end of a sprint?
Yes. I thought that was possibly going to happen. But it didn't.
Well, at the time of recording, it still hasn't. It still might.
Indeed. Do you think this means he might be heading for an exit in F1? Maybe he already knows that that's the case and he's just doing the right thing to help the team?
Or he's auditioning for a job at Sauber.
Could be to spoil one of my spicy hot takes. KMag is going to go to Audi to protect the Hulk. I don't know.
Yeah.
Last thing on sprint race recap. Merck made a big song and dance. Both drivers talking about it. They did it in their race debrief from China. We won't change the setup between the sprint race and the qualification. I don't know if they did or not, but I certainly felt like they should have done at the end of the race, end of the sprint race yesterday.
I won't go that far, because if the car's that much of a dog, maybe they were on the best setup.
It's possible. Qualification recap?
We mentioned it. Max tied for second on the all-time constructor or consecutive pole positions. Lewis also has 7, by the way. He did that in 2015.
Oh, so
yeah.
He's got a lot of work to do to get back on the top.
Yeah. Yep. Danny burned up all of his mojo in the sprint race and forgot that there were other things going on this weekend.
Yeah, that sucks. And big news. Lance Stroll is the first driver to ever out-qualify Fernando Alonso twice in one race weekend. Go Stroll.
Statistics, man. Statistics.
Was it Sex, Lies, and Statistics? Oh, no. Lies, Damn Lies, and Statistics. There we go.
So now that we're getting to the point where we normally wrap up the podcast, should we finally talk about the race?
Race recap. So, Checo is auditioning for a new nickname.
Yeah, he was going Bottas bowling at the... he was almost trying to go Bottas bowling at the beginning of the race.
Just as Checo fails to achieve the greatness that car should enable him to do, he also failed to reach the highest potential of going Bottas bowling, because he didn't hit anyone. And like if you're going to go for it, do it. Do it. If you're going to do a job, do it right.
He was so close to hitting Max.
It was so close. As I was refreshing the internet, listeners, just to check to see if something has happened to KMag yet, the picture of Max in the cool-down room as he sees that is classic. That's going to become a meme.
Is it just like, dear God, what almost happened to me?
Yes. You said Hamilton had a great start. Did he though?
He did.
He didn't go
because he was up to like 8th.
He was up by one spot.
Have you seen his previous starts this season.
No, I see. Relatively in the context of Lewis Hamilton and his inability to start races successfully, yes, it was pretty good. He did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
But
he was still stuck behind a Haas.
Yes, and his teammate...
a different Haas, though.
Which one was it? It was the Hulk.
It was Hulkenberg. It was Hulkenberg this time.
It was Hulkenberg. But his teammate dropped 3 places. Good job, George.
George really had a bad weekend.
Yeah, he wasn't vibing. I'm waiting for the excuses in the post-race interviews. Oscar did a pretty good job. He was already ahead of Lando, but I think he did a pretty good job of moving up and keeping on top of it, and then really following behind Max. But then it turned out it was because Max forgot how to drive.
As we talked earlier, I don't think that Red Bull's really set up well for Miami. We'll see what back on a proper racetrack at Imola. I think it'll do great. I think the real question is how good is that McLaren's upgrades?
Yes, we don't really know. We will know. We will know at Imola.
Yes.
Did you notice how
unless it gets rained out again?
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be hilarious if Lando gets rained on and loses a second win. Be perfect. It's going to be the story of his entire career. Anyway, did you see that Charles made it all the way down to 4th from 2nd? It was a pretty good work, but then he managed to pull it off because Checo saved him.
Sure, Checo was doing the kind of racing you would expect on a Formula One lobby,
yes.
Rather than
yes, perfect.
or he needs to wait for that for turn 1 at Monza like everybody else.
Go Checo, give us what we want. Give us what. And
then we needed a little bit of excitement, so Max decided to hit a bollard.
Yes, I thought it was a beer bottle when I saw the thing in the road before we heard the radio messages from Max that he'd just chosen to just hit the bollard because he couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, trying to give the race a little bit of excitement, which, we got a virtual safety car. Some of the back runners got to pit, which was good for them.
Yeah. I was very surprised at the marshals in this race. They were absolutely spot on, quick, fast. They knew what they were doing. It was brilliant. Again, Monaco light. Monaco, best marshals in the calendar. I think Miami might have the second best marshals in the calendar, apart from maybe Japan. Japan's very good.
Yeah, but yeah, no, that was good. And then KMag was doing his best to try to get a weekend off.
Man, he took out Logan, and he nearly took out somebody else. Who was it? He took out basically everybody. KMag was basically being annoying and got more penalties and more problems.
Let's do a quick internet refresh. I'm just going to search for Kevin Magnussen at this point.
So while we wait for the details of does KMag get suspended for the next race, here's an interesting hypothetical. Assuming that KMag does get suspended for the next race, which please, universe, let's make this happen. And don't you monkey paw this for me. If you're Toto and you need to find a seat for Kimi to just give him one chance, do you call up Gene Haas and be like, I will shower you with a large amount of money for you to let Kimi drive in the car for one weekend while K-Mag's out? Is that what you do? Do you make that phone call? And will Gene take it? Because otherwise it's going to be Oliver.
I mean, I think I'd rather see Oliver at the car.
Oh, it's just spicy take.
Yeah. I mean, because he could have even more points.
Yes, in the grand scheme of honest, balanced reporting that we strive to hit with this this hot-breaking latest news podcast, having Oliver go into the Haas to drive it would be the best way to measure him, because he drove in the Ferrari. Let him drive in the Haas and you'll be able to compare the data and you'll be able to get a good vibe for whether he's truly good or whether he was saved by the car.
All right, the best I've got right now is Kevin Magnussen said it wasn't a good day again.
Shocker. So, Lewis drove like he cared this weekend? I think he did. He was trying really hard, and I was kind of surprised. The question is did he stop experimenting with setups? Because he's been given this message that everybody says is a lie, that he's been experimenting with setups all season, and he's just decided to take it for what it is.
Maybe he's finally found a good one.
Maybe he did. He had good pace. He was driving. He looked so jazzed every time he nearly got run off the road by KMag. It was fantastic. He put moves on the inside, put moves on the outside. In hindsight, his performance against Perez was maybe less exciting because apparently the Red Bull was a tractor this weekend. But I think he did pretty good to stay with Perez right until the end.
Well, it was a tractor trying to overtake another tractor.
True. One tractor on another tractor. It's like we're watching ESPN3.
Tractor on tractor violence.
Yes. Now there's a new game for us to start. Safety car timing?
Yeah, so after the racing for a little bit, there was Kevin Magnussen, who we love to talk about, tried to overtake or keep alongside Logan where it's really not a spot you should be alongside at. and sent Logan into the barrier.
As much as I'd like to rag on Logan, I think that was KMag's fault.
Yeah, I mean, the stewards agreed and gave him a 10-second penalty.
Yes.
Did he have more time penalties than the pole lap time?
That's a great question.
Like
Over
this
the whole
whole
weekend,
weekend?
I think he was
Yeah.
close. Because you remember, he also got a penalty for not serving his penalty correctly.
Right.
I will say, do we think it screwed Max's race? I know we talked briefly about it, but we should dive deep into this.
I don't know if it did. I think at the end of the day, even without the safety car, Lando had really good pace on the hards, and I think it would have been interesting to see how he cleared. Who would have been in front of him? Oscar and Charles, I think, would have been in front of him after a pit stop.
Yeah.
So it would have been interesting to see how quickly he could have cleared those cars. Probably would have been right breeze past Oscar just because of pace and teammates. Charles would have been interesting, but like Charles couldn't keep touch with Max as like the race went on. You have to think he would get around Charles, and then it's just a case of how he and Max would have raced.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that leans me towards it did not screw Max, but I think Max would have won without the safety car, in that I think Max would have done a good job of keeping Lando behind.
Well, the reason why I say it might have screwed Max is because the safety car picked up Max and not Lando.
Mm-hmm.
And that ruined any gap for like those drivers were now in a line.
To go pick up their own pit stop.
Yeah, and they couldn't do a pit stop under the safety car. Because if Max and Charles and everybody else like pitted, you know.
But even with new tires, do you think that would have helped Max?
I don't know. I think maybe the mediums could have gone better than the hards. It's tough to say.
Yeah, it wasn't Max's race. It wasn't his race. It was his race to lose. Wasn't that it was his race to lose. It was Lando's race to win.
I think the interesting thing in all that was the fact that the safety car seemed to make that mistake and picked up the wrong driver.
Yeah.
Like that's something that was very surprising to see.
For how many races has he been picking up a Red Bull and they just forgot what it was like to be somebody else?
Yeah, maybe, but you feel like they, as you go out onto the track, it's like, okay, let everybody by until you get McLaren.
Did you hear the stat that Max there hasn't been another driver other than Max to lead the first lap since Austin 2020 something? It was ridiculous. It was a crazy stat. It was a long time ago.
And there have been like 9 Charles Leclerc poles since then.
Charles is so overrated. Anyway, shall we talk about the post-safety car racing?
It was intense 30 laps.
It was pretty close. It was a bit of a train.
It was a bit of a train. Instead of Max flipping off into the distance, Lando flipped off into the distance.
Yes, that's what surprised me the most, because everybody was like, I think there was a news report, somebody was writing before the race, was like, the only way to beat Max is to break DRS and get away. And that's exactly what Lando did, and it was great. I'm still waiting for Lando's disqualification for some asinine reason, but let's see what happens. Yeah, it was pretty good. I thought the radio to Oscar was hilarious after Oscar really was trying to get Danny Rick and get past him. And the radio came on and was like, hey, Oscar, please don't cause a safety car. Lando's in the lead. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Lando's leading the race, and we would like him to stay there.
Yes,
Thank you.
It would be excellent if you could make this happen. Thank you very much. Yeah, Nando did what Nando does. I'm hoping that Nando gets a good car before he nopes out.
The Alpines got a point in all this.
A whole point, proving that Ocon is the better driver than Gasly, and that hurts me in a number of different ways.
I think they are each worse than each other.
Apparently, Mr. Gasly has been linked with a seat at Williams for next year too.
Ooh.
Yeah, this silly season is going to be ridiculous.
It's the Red Bull rejects team.
Oh, spicy! Yes.
I mean, it is.
It is. We should talk about the winner of the race, because I know we've mentioned it. We haven't really mentioned Lando won his first race on merit with pace. It was great. It was fantastic. Good for him. Everybody gave him high fives. Lewis was giving him handshakes and blah 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 as they were driving around. Max did the same thing.
Everybody congratulated him. It was insane.
Yes. I thought I was not surprised about, but I thought it was most interesting. The hug between Andrea Stella and Lando seemed to be the most emotive of them all, which I thought was fascinating, given that Andrea Stella's only been running the team for 18 months. So
yeah,
It's a bunch of hippies there.
Everybody was so happy for Lando's win.
Yes. Do you think Nico was happy for it? Either of the Nicos?
No, because Nico didn't win. Nico is only happy if Nico wins.
There we go. Exactly.
And one of them's been happy, one of them's never been happy.
Yeah. It's always the way. I would like to take a brief, slight turn to take a slower lane here, just for a moment, to talk about F1 Academy. I've been watching W Series, and I've watched the F1 Academy since it's been available on the various services. And, it's interesting and blah, 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 but the cars are underpowered, etc., etc. But the races this weekend, they were great. It was spicy. I don't know whether this is because Miami is a good track for slightly lower powered cars, but there was overtakes, there was spicy overtakes, there were spins, there were spills, there were thrills, there were dominating wins, there was fighting from the back, and most importantly, in the great conquest of the stats demon, Haas got their first ever podium with a lady called Chloe Chembis on race 1 yesterday. She was in third.
I mean, presumably the Haas NASCAR team has gotten podiums before.
Wait, there's a Haas, but not in F1, and it's called F1 Academy. It's not called Lady Drivers Academy. It's called F1 Academy. So certainly their first single seat. Oh, I suppose they probably had one in IndyCar. He probably did IndyCar as well.
I mean, I believe NASCAR is also single seat.
True, but it would not be classed as a single seater. Can we just celebrate the moment for them and enjoy their great success?
No, because they don't have any.
Whatever.
If they didn't employ Kevin Magnussen, yes, I would celebrate them for success. But they employ Kevin Magnussen, so I can't.
Perfect. Anyway, you should watch more F1 Academy. It's great. Should we talk about spicy takes and rumors, or do you got more for the race?
No, I want to say more on Formula One Academy. Because I think
Love
everything is great, but I think it still suffers from the same problem the W Series has as what next.
Yes.
And I think it would be great if you win F1 Academy, you get what they're in Formula 4 cars, right? So
yeah, I think it's Formula 4, maybe a little bit less than Formula 4, but close.
For the Formula 4 cars.
Yeah.
Then I think you would get a drive in a Formula 3 car. Like, they guarantee, like, either they are running a team in Formula 3 so that, like, the two previous winners can race in Formula 3 for 1 or 2 seasons, fully paid for by Formula 1 Academy. But, like, at this point in time, or the team is paid for by Formula 1 Academy, like, but, like, at this point in time, like, it's just like the W Series of, like,
yes.
I've already forgotten her name, of Jamie Chadwick, who won everything in the W Series. I didn't even look that up. I just want you to know. Jamie Chadwick, who won everything in the W Series and, like, was still in the W Series.
Yeah, she had to fight really hard to get a seat in some other category. Whether she deserved it on merit, I have no idea, but, like, she couldn't get an F3 drive, she couldn't get an F2 drive. She's currently driving an Indy Lights, which my understanding is, like, F2 for IndyCar.
Yeah.
And so she's driving in that, and she's had, I think this is her second season, so somebody's actually given the time and energy to invest in her to give her a real chance. That's great. But I agree. Like, there needs to be a ramp, and that's what's missing. And Max, I think, said this recently himself. He's like, F1 Academy is great and all, but, they need faster, better cars, and they need a ramp to get them somewhere. It's all fine and dandy to have them driving around on the track and like, oh, aren't we good? They need to be able to go somewhere, and I totally agree. I think driving them in F3 with other F3 drivers, and let's see what happens. Yeah,
and, it's probably not going to be great overnight, but eventually it will be. And because I think you need a chance for people to see that, yes, these drivers are good enough to be on the Formula 3 grid and can compete on the Formula 3 grid, so that somebody takes an eye to them and goes, oh, I'll pay for your F2 drive. Like, right. That's, yeah. And it takes time to develop it, right? There's all the people who have the opportunity, and the people who might have the opportunity, the people who don't take the opportunity because they don't see that the opportunity is there further up. Like, say, yeah, I enjoy karting, but, like, yeah, okay, you're going to make a career of this? I mean, the people who drive in karting and eventually make a career out of it is very narrow, but it's even narrower in this case, and if they don't have that ramp, and there's no path, then there's no point in doing it. I'd better go do something else, like become, I don't know, a scientist or an athlete doing 100-meter runs or whatever it is. I can't wait for, like, 3 years from now when, like, Max and Lewis are retired and they, like, team up to do this venture.
Yes.
Like, Max Lewis and Susie Wolf make all of this happen.
Yes, along with Seb.
Max handles it from, like, the sim racing side of finding sim race drivers to pull in. Lewis does the diversity side of things and find, yeah.
Yes.
No, this will be great.
Love
New
it.
favorite team.
Love it. Maximilton. There you go.
Oh my gosh, we've been doing this podcast so long today. All right, takes and rumors. Let's do it.
Okay, this one should be quick. So my spicy take and rumor.
No, it shouldn't be.
It's going to be quick. I promise it's going to be quick. So my spicy
right.
take and rumor here is based on the fact that what we're going to do with Kimi, because Kimi's got all these problems. I don't know if he's ready for F1, but this leaves the great question of who you're going to put in the second seat at Merck. Like, I don't know, because we're not going to get Max, because Max is too expensive and he wants to just retire with his cats.
And he doesn't want to seem to race for Mercedes.
Yeah, who wants to drive a tractor? Like, it's not worth it. Even if Adrian Newey is going to fix it for you. We've got Bottas, who I suggested earlier. But here's my real spicy take that I think actually has legs, and it would be perfect in so many ways for Mercedes. Sebastian Vettel is going to come back for one season, because they only want it for one season, to keep the seat warm for Kimi, right? It's Seb needs the one last hurrah. Toto needs to be friends with the board in Mercedes, so get a German driver into a German car. It's going to be amazing. He's going to give him a 1-year deal, massive amount of money, ambassador role, and follow on with being the reserve test driver for another year. It's a perfect story. It has feel good vibes as long as Seb does not go skiing afterwards.
Oh Jesus, that wasn't in the doc. No, if anything, Lewis doesn't need to go skiing because he's returning to a car, or he's going... no, Lewis needs to not go skiing after his 3-year stint in Ferrari, because after a certain 7-time world champion did a 3-year stint in a team and went skiing, we haven't really heard from them since.
Yes. But in all seriousness, I think this has a distinct possibility, and that's why Seb is doing the WEC 24-hour race Le Mans thing.
So the only reason I don't like this is because I don't think Toto is a good storyteller.
I will subscribe to that. Although, if anybody is at Harvard and has attended his management classes, please let us know if he's a good storyteller. Write into feedback@tinfoilhelmets.com.
Well, you know who is at business school and could be a good storyteller?
Who's that? Nicholas Latifi!
Yeah! And we've got off the rails. I love it. So, on the takes and rumors note, McLaren had a really good weekend. This is the closest I've ever wanted to say of McLaren is back, because this is the first time in a while where it really looked like the Red Bull would have been passed on track.
Yes. And I think this is going to sound really odd, but super important. It's not just that it was able to overtake the Red Bull on track, it was able to gap the other cars.
It was able to gap the Red Bull. Like, it wasn't like, if it going back to like everything being like Monaco, where, Max hung within a second in the DRS zone the entire time and couldn't pass because Monaco's stupid. He gapped him.
Yes.
Like, it was 7 seconds at the end.
Yes. Yes.
And I think there's probably a little bit of Max being like, well, we're not going to, this isn't my day, but he was still pulling a gap on Charles throughout the last bit of the race. So he wasn't not trying. And this is, I think, if anything, McLaren have currently proved that they know how to build and develop a car again.
And they don't have a wind tunnel yet.
Yet. Who needs a wind tunnel when you have good CFD? Surely they have a wind tunnel they can use somewhere.
No, they have to drive to Germany to go use it. But it's not the same. They have their own. But I think your point about CFD is super important. Wind tunnels aren't where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can actually model like turbulent air racing. Anyway, we should have a CFD podcast at some point in time. Anyway, but I think that right now, if I had to pick who's the biggest threat for 2026 is who's going to win the Drivers' Constructors, McLaren and Lando Norris look very good for that.
Here's the one bit that I think we don't talk about enough when we think about 2026. Who's going to get the engines right and who's going to get the engine wrong?
That's a big thing. I am counting, is McLaren still going to be on Mercedes engines, then, right? Mercedes usually makes a pretty good engine, as evidenced by their win today. I think the Red Bull engine is also going to be very good, and Ferrari, depending on how you feel about them burning oil, they also tend to make a very good engine. It's the Alpines that you're screwed with. And if anything, these engines are simpler than the current system of engines because you're getting rid of the MGU-H. So I think it's an easier engine to get right. The interesting thing in all this is, like, I don't think Red Bull's going to fall off a cliff or until 2026 because they still have even next year, they will have a Newey-inspired car that they can develop. I trust them to be able to develop the car in the regs. So I think we're still looking at Max winning in 25. I think you disagree with this.
No, I have a spicy take about what I think might happen, but it's also the fact they do still have Max in 2025. Even if the car is not as exceptional as it is today, even if it's equally level pegged, I think, assuming that Max hasn't given up on everything, I think you still have a good chance that they can win because of that.
I think Max could still win the championship in 2025, but I think it'll be a closer championship if McLaren truly has taken this step forward that it looks like they have after this weekend.
This is where Toto gets his revenge. At Abu Dhabi 2025, it's all points are equal. It's now whoever finishes in front of whoever it is on the track. Lando's going round. Nicholas Latifi's brought back for one race, causes a safety car. And Max loses out because everybody's left Red Bull, so the strategy's really bad.
No, but this actually goes well into the Formula One theory of everybody has one bullshit world championship.
Yes. So Lewis has 2008. Yeah. Which one is Fernando Alonso's bullshit championship?
One of them. But the first
does that mean that Jenson Button's one championship is a bullshit championship?
I mean, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
But no, but also yes. Are we saying that Nico Rosberg's one championship is a bullshit championship?
Oh, without question.
Yeah. So, but I love the idea of everybody has one bullshit championship. Schumacher taking out Damien Hill? That's a bullshit championship.
Yes.
Yeah. So no, everybody has like one. All the greats have like one bullshit championship, and I'm okay with that.
Yes. This is the reason why they have to go get more. Because if you just get one, it could be your only one, and it's not real.
Yeah, and then we look at Jensen and Nico like, sure, you're world champions.
Yeah.
You did win at the end of the season. You have the trophy. You are a world champion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So, but I think that really opens it up to 2026 of if Ferrari get Newey, how much actually is Newey able to influence the culture? Because this is a guy who allegedly does not know how to run a CFD program. And the Brits, I assume everybody who works at Red Bull, is more than happy to take his drawings and put them into CFD, and as he mentors them and tries to learn something. And I'm not sure that's going to cross the Italian language barrier.
This is why I think, in all honesty, Newey is going to retire. But I think the consulting F1 engineer thing has legs, but in a more realistic way that he's going to around and sell his services in a mercenary sort of way. I can actually see Ferrari hiring him and being like, we're not coming here for you to design the car. We actually think we can get a reasonable car out of this. We're not complete chumps. I mean, they are Ferrari, but they're not complete chumps. And can you help us develop the culture? Because if there's one thing that Fred has said, and I think it's what a lot of people say, is what's broken at Ferrari is not the depth. It's the culture, and the collaboration is all kinds of messed up. And I think that if you bring in Newey and say, I want you to come spend 3 months a year helping us, maybe I think that's actually the right thing to do. Because if you hire Adrian Newey to design your car and he auteurs it and just magical car, 2 seconds, thanks very much, peace out, you're left with a one-time hit. Like, maybe he gets you such a huge advantage, but I think that's unlikely. You need to follow through. And Ferrari doing a one-time win, I mean, it's a classic Ferrari, but we need to change the message. We need to change the story. You need to change the team.
I mean, we'll truly know Ferrari is a changed team when Plan A makes it more than 15 laps into a race. And instead of... Jeez. What even is Plan A that Plan A doesn't make it that far? Or do they ever even have a Plan A? And that's like that's just like their secret to throw off all the other teams, their three-dimensional chess of... See, the thing is, Plan B is actually our Plan A, and we'll screw with everybody by saying like, yep, we're looking like Plan B. Like, yeah.
If it was any other team, I could believe that, but this is Ferrari. I don't think they are. They don't have a good plan to be able to pull off the Plan B being Plan A.
Maybe Plan A was Checo takes out Max at the very start of the race, and then he just missed, so now we have to move on to Plan B in 3 corners.
That would be such classic Ferrari. Let's hope for the extremely unlikely thing that nearly happened but didn't.
Yeah. But, what if Adrian pries Hannah Schmidt away from Red Bull to Ferrari? That would be interesting.
See, this is the flaw. This is where Christian Horner has played his hand so wrong with his arrogancy.
Absolutely.
He is so utterly flawed. If I'm Merck, who I'm calling up on the blower and saying, come to my team? It's Hannah Schmidt. I'm saying, come to the team, come do the strategy thing. we'll get you to team principal, and you can have it when Toto quits to be just the CEO. Like, that feels like the actual story. She looks like she's young enough, looks like she's got enough passion. She could go do this. It would be great.
Oh yeah, outside of Adrian Newey and I guess Max Verstappen, if you're including all Red Bull personnel. Although technically I think he is signed to like Red Bull Driving Academy, not the team. But I have to say the three most desirable people from Red Bull are Adrian Newey, Max Verstappen, and Hannah Schmidt.
Yeah, hard agree. Hard agree.
Yeah.
But to counter your point about what you think the future looks like, mine is that I think Lando will win the 2025 championship because Newey has decided he was going to quit. He decided a while ago. I think he really did decide a while ago. I'm not just saying this for spicy purposes. But
if he did decide a while ago, that means that Red Bull's actually in a better state to continue car development than if he were to just suddenly run away.
But it depends on how he's chose to strategize around that, right? Because my theory is that he decided it, and he has ruined the 2025 car just to make Christian Horner look like a chump. On top of that, Max might quit because I'm pretty sure his contract's been tweaked in such a way that he can leave, which means Lando, with the McLaren that's ascendant and has proven to be a great car against a totally broken Red Bull, absolutely going to win. 2025. I think that's what's going to happen.
You know what? We are setting ourselves up for a great last season of the regs season.
Yes.
Like what always happens.
Yes.
And then immediately getting new regs. The field will finally be more level. Things will finally be close. 2025 is going to be a great season. And then we're going to be back in, 2022 of somebody is 3 seconds up the road and this is boring as hell.
Ferrari, because they've got Lewis now and it will be perfect. And the utopia will happen and the sun will shine down and it will be fantastic.
Whoa. Are we that Lewis Hamilton podcast now?
Yes.
Okay, well, you wrote predictions for Monaco. The next race is Imola, so let's start there.
Well, before we go to that, there is one more comment about spicy takes and rumors. So I was watching a video from the F1 people, and they were talking about the W05 being why it's so amazing, and they talked about the suspension, and it had this magical suspension where it was completely passive, and it let it behave like active suspension, so that the right corner and the right front corner and the left front corner, blah, blah, blah. They all were in some passive fluid thing and it was magical and it got banned by the FIA. So the only thing they could do was for the front and the rear, and it still really helped. They had this magical suspension. Like everybody else took multiple seasons to try and copy this. What's wrong with the Merc this year, supposedly? Dodgy suspension. Because they finally banned all of that stuff and Merc doesn't know how to make normal suspension. They have to use crazy suspension and they've screwed it up. So that's my spicy take and rumor. Before we go on to the predictions for Monaco, I'm sorry, it's actually Imola. Whoops, how did I get that wrong?
Okay.
I need to rethink all of my predictions because they were fundamentally predicated on it being for Monaco.
Let's see. I'll say Max ties Senna's record.
Yes.
Should I be really even bold on this?
Yes.
In the rain.
Okay, yeah.
Proving he is the best.
The rain master.
Yeah, because he'll tie Senna's record in the rain in Imola.
Okay. I am going to take a totally spicy take. In the rain, in a dampening track, conveniently between SQ1, SQ2, SQ3. So is it a sprint?
Wait, is this another sprint weekend?
Oh, God.
Please tell me it's not another sprint weekend.
I can't be dealing with a sprint weekend.
You just said SQ. That's sprint qualified.
I know. Yeah.
Nobody's going to believe that we carefully research for this podcast anymore.
Yeah, where is it? Emilia Romagna. Oh, it's a normal race. Thank God for that.
All right, in the rain, on a dampening track.
I think Lewis is going to get pole.
Lewis gets pole. Okay.
Lewis gets pole. He is going to vibe so hard after the success of this race that he's enjoyed, that he's found that passion. And he's going to pull a China. He's just going to be in the wet. It's just going to get it just right to get through into Q3, and he will nail it and get on pole. He'll be absolutely swallowed up in the race, which will be totally dry and won't be a problem at all. And he'll end up down in P10 or so, and Russell will get past him. But certainly, that's my spicy take.
I'm going to say a different driver lineup than Miami.
Ooh, you can't say that without providing your top two different driver.
Well, yes, I'm leaving it open for either Logan getting kicked out and Kimi coming in, or KMag getting banned and Oscar coming in. So I think one of those things might happen. So I'm leaving it open to a different driver lineup.
So your prediction is one of those two.
Well, maybe, or also banking on somebody getting COVID or sick or something, and somebody else comes in. Or maybe Lando has another accident in Holland between now and then. And we didn't even talk about that on Between Race Drama.
What happened between race drama? What I missed this.
Lando was partying in the Netherlands on King's Day, and that's why he had a thing on his nose, because he had something fell on his face or something. Max does have an alibi. He was probably sim racing.
Yeah, it was a broken glass that he apparently got smashed.
Yeah.
Not in his face. Yeah. And it was thanks to...
But it did hit him. But he did have a laceration on his nose.
From Martin Garrix. So
yeah.
Let that be a lesson to you children out there. Don't go partying on King's Day in the Netherlands. Shizzle will dizzle. Yeah.
Do you have one more to finish up the podcast?
George Russell will not make it out of Q1.
Whoa. Well, this will put our batting average under 500. This is great.
Yes. I want to make sure we don't get hired by a baseball team.
Well, we want enough predictions that are right that people think we're good at this, but not enough that we're just taking all the easy ones.
Exactly. This is what gets us signed, and then we don't have to, and then we can just accept the fact that $100 million deal for one season's fine. It's good.
Any other follow-ups on our longest podcast we have ever done?
No, I think we should close this out before the 1 hour and 30-minute mark.
Well, if you have made it this far, we cannot thank you enough for listening to Tinfoil Helmets. As always, we are awaiting your feedback. Please write in at feedback@tinfoilhelmets.com. Maybe we're actually checking this. I don't know. And let us know your conspiracies, feedbacks, and wants. Do you want Kimi in that Williams? Also, tell your friends to listen, like, rate, and subscribe. And if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, because I don't believe the YouTube views are actual true, please comment pineapple in the comments, and let's see if anybody actually does it. This is gonna be a long one.
Maybe I'll need to go for a pee halfway through, who knows?